Bienvenidos. Welcome to the Mission Basilica San Diego de Alcalá. We hope that your visit here will be most enjoyable. This mission is referred to as the Mother of the Missions because it was the first in a chain of 21 which extended 600 miles along the coast of California from San Diego to Sonoma. California was discovered as early as 1542 by Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo. But over 200 years passed before attempts were made to settle here. King Carlos III of Spain sent 4 expeditions from Mexico, then called New Spain, to colonize Alta California in 1769 and to prevent the Russian encroachment from the north. Gaspar de Portola, governor of Baja California, was in charge of the expeditions, 2 by sea and 2 by land. Accompanying Portola and his Spanish soldiers on the second land expedition were friars of the Order of St. Francis under the leadership of Padre Junípero Serra. Father Junípero Serra was born in Mallorca, Spain in 1713. After earning a doctorate in sacred theology in 1742 and teaching philosophy at the Lullian University, he fulfilled a lifelong dream of becoming a missionary and came to New Spain, or Mexico, when he was 36 years old. When he first arrived in the New World, he was bitten on his left foot by a mosquito, a zancudo, which left him with a chronic infection and a very bad limp. He was small of stature, standing 5 feet 2 inches and weighing 110 pounds. Father Serra spent 20 years working in the missions in the Sierra Gorda Mountains and in Mexico City before being assigned to establish the Alta California missions. A statue of Padre Serra, shown in the habit of his Franciscan order, stands beneath the palm tree in the circular driveway in front of the mission. San Diego de Alcalá, the first mission, was founded by Padre Serra on July 16, 1769. The site chosen was a hill at the mouth of a river, with a bay to the west and a river valley to the east. Today that bay is the harbor of San Diego, and the hill is the 40-acre Presidio Park. This mission demanded great sacrifices from the beginning. Only 1/2 of the 300 men who set out for Alta California arrived in San Diego. Those who did survive nearly starved to death before ships arrived with supplies 9 months later. The Indians who lived in this area were the Kumeyaay. They were hunters and gatherers and were fairly nomadic, living in this area in the winter and moving to the mountains in the summer. They had never seen cloth before and were very interested in the Spanish people who had just arrived. Father Serra worked long and hard trying to gain the trust and friendship of the native inhabitants, whom he referred to as Diegueños. He began teaching them to be farmers, carpenters, masons, blacksmiths, saddlers, tailors, and millers. In the spring of 1770, assured of the success of this mission, Father Serra left for Monterrey to establish the second mission, San Carlos Borromeo, which was later moved to Carmel. In 1774, under the guidance of Father Luis Jayme, Mission San Diego was moved 6 miles east to this site to separate the Indians from the soldiers, to be closer to the river, and because the soil at this site was more fertile. On November 4th, 1775, 2 Indian converts led an attack of pagan Indians in the middle of the night on the mission. Over 600 strong, they set fire to the church, monastery, and guardhouse, all of which were constructed of dry reed thatch, which burned quickly. During the attack, Father Luis Jayme, who greeted his attackers with the words, "Love God, my children," was clubbed to death, and California received her first Christian martyr. The white cross at the extreme right at the front of the mission denotes the spot where Father Jayme, the mission's second pastor, was martyred. He was 35 years old, and his body was taken to the Presidio and later brought back to the mission in 1803. In 1776, Father Serra left his headquarters at the Carmel Mission and returned to San Diego to oversee the reconstruction of this mission. The records had all been destroyed in the fire, and new ones had to be made. The church, a 2-room monastery, a dining room, a storage room, kitchen, harness and tool shed, and Indian quarters were completed by the following year. The first stop of your tour is Casa del Padre Serra. Originally, it was 2 rooms, and it is furnished to resemble the simple lifestyle of the early days of the Padres. It is the only remaining portion of the original monastery where Father Serra and his Franciscan successors would have stayed. The fireplace would not have been here during the mission period, and was probably added in the mid-1800s. Notice the diagram on the right-hand wall. It gives you a good idea of how the mission compound appeared at the peak of its activity. This is the 5th church on this site. The first church was built in 1774 and destroyed during the Indian Raid of 1775, as we mentioned. Church number 2, of adobe and thatched roof, was built in 1776 and later enlarged in 1780 when the roof was covered with a thick layer of mud to protect it from fire. As the population of the mission continually increased and possible damage from earthquakes became a concern, Pastor Fernando Martin decided to enlarge the church in 1813 and reinforce it with the buttress wings. Today, all that remains of that 1813 church are the facade, the front buttress wings, the baptistry arch, and the lower half of the campanario. The present church was reconstructed in 1930, closely following the historic outlines of the 1813 church. In the middle 1800s, after the mission passed from religious to secular control, the United States cavalry was quartered at the mission, and the soldiers used the church for a barracks. The church was converted to a two-story building. The second floor was used for living quarters, and the bottom floor was used as a stable for the horses. The soldiers cut down the surrounding trees for firewood, but at least they kept the roof from collapsing and the buildings in repair. After they left, the ground stood abandoned for several years, during which time tiles on the roof and heavy timbers were stolen. In 1860, an earthquake caused the upper portion of the bell tower to crumble. When Abraham Lincoln returned 22 acres of mission land to the Catholic Church in 1862, the roof had collapsed and the bells had disappeared. Notice that the floor tiles at this end of the church are of two shades. The darker tiles are the original tiles of the 1813 mission. They were fired in underground kilns for durability. As you can see, the baptistry is in keeping with the rugged simplicity of the mission. The 16th century statue of St. Anne, Mother of Mary and patroness of all mothers, at the back of the baptistry is the oldest wood carving at this mission. The baptismal font is a replica of the one in which Junípero Serra was baptized in his native Petra de Mallorca the day after his birth, November 24th, 1713. Opposite the baptistry is a large crucifix, sculpted in Mexico. The heavy double wooden doors at this front entrance to the church are hand-carved copies of the original doors. On either side of the doors hang paintings of Mary, Mother of Sorrows, and Saint Joseph, foster father of Christ. The balcony above is the choir loft and is entered from the outside. There are no known descriptions of the original altar, but records indicate that planks from the decks of ships were used to construct a simple altar similar to the one you see here. The crucifix without arms above the high altar shows the ravages of time. It is Italian and was carved in Europe in the 1700s, during Father Serra's missionary period. The two statues on each side of the reredos are of Saint Joseph and the Virgin Mary. As was the method then, the faces and hands are carved of wood, with the rest of the statue dressed in vestments made of cloth. The small statue of Father Serra in the right front of the sanctuary is from his native island of Mallorca. The marble cross on the floor of the sanctuary denotes the area under which Fathers Jayme, Mariner, Panto, Martin, and Figuer are buried. The church is 150 feet long, 35 feet wide, and 29 feet high. All mission churches are narrow because there was no way of joining beams in mission days. A building could only be as wide as the height of the trees that were found. Once cut, the trees were lined up side by side, and the shortest tree determined the width of the church. Notice the heavy wooden lintels or beams at the top of the doorways. These are the original timbers found on the grounds and incorporated in the restoration process. The church was plastered inside and out, a lime wash to add to its beauty. The campanario is the most distinctive feature of the mission. It differs from a bell tower in that it is merely a wall with openings to hold the bells. The upper half of the original campanario was destroyed in an earthquake in 1860. But fortunately, drawings had been made of it prior to the earthquake, which enabled it to be accurately reconstructed. The height of the campanario is approximately 46 feet, while the facade is approximately 35 feet. The campanario contains 3 smaller bells at the 2 top levels, which are copies of the originals, and 2 larger bells at the lower level, which were recovered after a long search by Father Junípero, the parish priest of the Church of St. Joseph in San Diego. He began a small-scale restoration of the mission before his death in 1907. Father Junípero found 2 of the bells in his own church, 2 more in the chapel known as Ramona's Marriage Place in Old Town, and a 5th being used as a dinner bell in the mess hall of the U.S. military barracks in San Diego. 4 of the bells Father Junípero found had been damaged in an earthquake. Among these was the original Mater Dolorosa. It has been recast into the large bell you see on the left. The inscription on it reads, "Originally cast in New Spain in 1796. Recast in San Diego, California in 1894, Mater Dolorosa." It is the largest of the bells and weighs 1,200 pounds. The large bell to the right is also an original, and it is inscribed San Juan Nepomuceno, Ave Maria Purissima, 1802. It has a large cross of raised diamond design and a full crown. It weighs 805 pounds. The bells are hung with a steel cable covered with rawhide. The 1802 bell has an almost musical quality due to the small amount of silver which was added to the alloy used in the casting of the bell. All 5 bells are rung only once a year. This ringing occurs on the Sunday nearest July 16th, the birthday of the mission, celebrated as the Festival of the Bells. Atop the campanario stands a large wooden cross, hewn from the remains of original timbers. As you walk these paths, you may sense the peace and tranquility that the Franciscan padres experienced 200 years ago. The vegetation is typical of that found throughout the San Diego area today. The large millstones placed in the garden are called molinas and were used for the coarse grinding of cereal grains. The mission inhabitants ate atole, or boiled grain similar to porridge, twice a day, and a stew of meat and vegetables at noon. Straight ahead is the Father Luis Jayme Museum, where you will find copies of historic mission documents, pictures of the mission during its colorful history, and many interesting artifacts. Classes from the University of San Diego carried out their excavation starting in 1966. Under the direction of Dr. Raymond Brandis and Dr. J.R. Moriarty, over 1,000 history students have worked on this site. They have studied the techniques of excavation and restoration of historic sites. More than 20 separate rooms, workshops, burial places, and over 50,000 artifacts dating from the pre-Hispanic period to the present have been found. These artifacts help tell the story of the original mission. Father Serra founded 9 of the 21 California missions. Along the covered walkway in front of the mission, the 9 niches house terracotta statues of the patrons of these missions. Here is where the Camino Real, the King's Highway, began. Try to imagine the Padres' feelings as they were forced to leave the missions, see an end to Father Serra's work and dreams, watch the buildings crumble, the fields become barren, the gardens dying, and the Indians returning to their former ways of life. The spirit of those ambitious padres lives on here, however, and today the mission bells again ring out, beckoning the faithful to kneel in prayer within the mission walls. We hope you have enjoyed your tour of Mission Basilica San Diego de Alcalá and wish you a pleasant day. Adiós. Vaya con Dios.